elephant.
Oh, c'est l'éléphant ça? Qu'est-ce qu'il fait l'éléphant?
Dump it. Dump, 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 dump. Here's for supper. You want for snack?
Oui.
Ah, je l'ai. Je sais, on va dans la rue. Tu vas passer.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, hi, welcome. My name is Soraya and I'm a mother of two. I have a toddler who's just turned 3 years old and I have a baby. And in this video series, I am telling you everything about how I taught my toddler how to read before she even turned 3 years old. And if you haven't seen the first video in this series, I will link it here. Please go and check it out because in this first video, I explain all the reasons why you should consider teaching your very young child to read. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about how to spark an interest for reading and how I got both my children, who have very different personalities, to love books. And I will also tell you everything I did before starting the actual formal reading lessons with Emma to prepare her for the course.
Tu peux utiliser le pot. La première fois, petit canard, arrêtez. Oh!
So I strongly believe that the first step to teaching your child how to read is to get them interested in reading in the first place. So you need to spark an interest and you need to cultivate the love for reading books. With Emma, from very early on, I knew that I was interested in teaching her to read at a young age, and at the time I didn't know if it was doable or how I would go about it, but what I did know is that it was key to make sure she loves book and she loves reading so that she would be much more motivated to start learning to read later on. And so what I did is that from a very young age, I started from 3 or 4 months old, I think, I started including reading books every day as part of our bedtime routine. So every day she would sit on my lap and I would read books to her. And what's really important is to make sure you pick books that are age appropriate for your child. So for a very small child, you will need books that have big, bright, colorful pictures, maybe even texture. Some books have sounds in them as well, but what's important is that the book shouldn't have too many words. You shouldn't be staying on each page for too long, so you should be able to turn the page fairly quickly because baby at that time won't focus very long on just a single page. So for example, one book that Emma loved was something like this. This is in French, but it doesn't matter. So this is something like this. It's a book that is textured. You can see is there any word? There's just the name of the color, that's it. I don't need to be reading anything, so we can just turn the pages whenever she wants to. She can touch, she can touch the textures. I think this one even makes sounds. Yeah, here we go. So this one even makes sounds, so you can see it's pretty beaten up. She loves it, her brother loves it. That's a great example. This is another one. This has just literally, this is her brother's favorite book at the moment. He's just turned 1. And as you can see, there's literally just 1 word per page. Because for the longest time, it's not about the story. It's about this moment with you. It's about the interaction. It's about looking. It's really a sensory experience. So make sure you get the appropriate books and you will see that your baby will be interested in that book. When they get a bit older, you can start getting books that have slightly longer text. Let me show you an example. This is a great example. So this is great for their 18 months plus. There's a few words, but it's still pretty fast to read, and again it has to be really interactive and it has to be fairly quick. You need to be able to move on to the next page fairly quickly, otherwise they just get bored and they want to run away and you may get frustrated. So just make sure it's age appropriate. And then once they're much older, you can start reading books with actual stories and much longer text like this. So another thing I did is that I would sometimes when I was doing my grocery shopping, I would take Emma to the children's book section in the supermarket, and I would let her pick a little book to take home. She also was very lucky that her grandma got her as a gift a book subscription where she received a new book in the post every month. So that was something really exciting that she could look forward to and then enjoy opening the little packaging and then reading the books over and over and over again for the next couple of days. But there's lots of free ways that you can get your child to read new books and to read new exciting stories. I know if you live in the UK, at the family center, there's usually loads of books. So you could take your child to a playgroup and have a look at some books over there. You can borrow books from the library. There's sometimes swap shops with other parents where you could get pre-owned books. So charity shops have tons of really, really good books for children. Another thing that I'm doing is that I'm also making sure that books are always readily available for my children. So this is in my son's room, and you can see that I've put a little shelf, and this actually goes onto another piece of furniture. There should be toy storage at the bottom, but because for now he's so small and he's only crawling, I've actually just left it on the floor for now so that he can easily access all of his books. And there's not a ton of books in there, and they are all age appropriate for him. So whichever one he grabs is gonna be perfect for his age group. And this is my daughter's one. Once again, it's completely within her reach. It's a little bit bigger because at her age she actually enjoys the stories, so she enjoys diversity. And once again, I regularly go through all the books and make sure all of them are age appropriate. So any book that she has outgrown, I move to her brother's bookshelf. Now, in the month and weeks prior to starting formal teaching, where you're going to actually teach your child how to read, there are things you can do that will then, help the process be a little bit more smooth, and that will prepare your child to actually learning how to read. So the first thing, and this is so easy, is that when you're reading a book to your child, you should be reading to your child every day, especially prior to starting the reading course. So when you're reading to your child, you can start following the lines of the text with your finger slowly as you read. Most children, they're just busy looking at the picture and they don't even notice that there is text there, so they're not even aware of the text, and they're not aware that when you're telling the story, you're actually reading off of the text. And so following with your finger makes them aware of the text and makes them realize that, oh, well, look at that. These are letters and letter form words. And when you read words, that's what makes up the story. And so that's why it's actually interesting to start learning those letters. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that when you're following with your finger, you're also gently teaching them that we read from top to bottom and from left to right. And this may seem silly, but actually children don't know that you read from left to right or from top to bottom. And you may notice when you start teaching your child how to read that they will randomly start reading from right to left, or you give them a list of words and they'll start at the bottom. And that's because they don't know really. So when you're following with your finger, you're already starting to teach them how we read. So the second thing you can start doing is actually sounding out words randomly, and you can do this just when you're talking during the day, or you can do this while you're reading. And so there are two ways you can sound out words. The first way is called choppy blending, and that's where you will say each letter sound separately with a brief pause in between. So for example, for the words fan and cat, you would say f, a, n, and k, a, t. And the second way that you can sound out words is called smooth blending. And that's when you just say the words really slowly and make sure you insist on each phoneme. So the trick with smooth blending is that some letter sounds cannot be stretched out. So for example, p, b, t cannot be stretched out. If you try to stretch them out, you will distort the sound and you will end up saying b, t instead of b, t, p. And so that's wrong, because if your child learns that sound wrong, then when they start reading, you will give them the word bat and they will go bat. And that will make it much more difficult for them to then recognize that word and read it and know what it is. If I go back to my previous example, if I'm smooth blending fan and cat, in the word fan, all the letter sounds can be stretched out, so I can say fan. But in the word cat, k and t cannot be stretched out, so I will go k-at. So I have been using both methods of sounding out words randomly with Emma. I usually do it while we're reading. I just don't always think of doing it when we're just talking during the daytime, but you can definitely do that as well. What's important is for your child to start realizing that words are formed of all these different sounds, that they don't just come as a unit. So that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments below and I will do my best to answer them either directly in the comments or I will address them in my next video. If you like the content of this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that you know when my next video is up, and I will see you next week. Bye!